Hey, everybody. This is the most magical episode that you've been waiting for. It's been teased on social media. It's been talked about in previous episodes, and it's here. It is the High Five Dun 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 Halloween special. And as always, I am joined by my most wondrous co-host, Joey.
Hello. Oh,
He is a wolf man right now. Nobody knows that, but he is a legitimate wolf man.
That was my Bela Lugosi impression. It's offensive. What you just said.
It is very offensive, actually. And Jay, we have something very special that people on social media have been waiting for in this episode. And that is the announcement of a permanent, life-changing alteration to the High Five the Podcast show. And that, my friends, is by adding a brand new co-host. And that co-host is in the form of the wonderful and lovely Mia St. Clair. Mia, welcome to High Five the Podcast.
Welcome.
What a horrible life decision you have made to join us.
Oh, I stand by it. I still support myself in my decision.
Good.
I guarantee that the listeners will definitely stand by it. They will finally be happy that they can hear someone else's voice other than just Jay and I all the time.
Oh, man.
We're tired of hearing those guys.
We're like, oh, we love the show, but shut up.
I'm happy
We're
to
tired of
provide a
hearing
little
their
bit of-
opinions. We don't care anymore. Let's just be done with it. And now, not only is that a surprise, but it is not the only surprise.
Oh, no,
We have a second surprise because when we do Halloween at High Five, we do Halloween big. Some may say spectrally big. I don't know. I was trying to find a joke there and it didn't work. Jay, save me. What do we have?
It's
ghastly.
It's a ghastly, ghoulishly large.
Yes, perfect.
Ghoulish surprise of monstrous proportions.
Perfect.
Those were some of the terms you were looking for.
And that is the fact that we are currently graced with the presence of Mr. John Gray himself, creator of the Ghost Whisperer television series. John, thank you so much for being on our show.
All right, I'm happy to be here. This is great.
Oh my God, we're so excited.
Halloween is my favorite time. It's my favorite holiday. My favorite time of year. I'm like a madman about Halloween, so this couldn't be better for me.
I love that. You speak directly to our hearts by saying that, I assure you.
I can't speak highly enough, John, that I love your sentiment. I love that you're a guest on the show because of this. My wife and I celebrate Halloween all month long. We do 31 days of horror movies. So every day in the month of October, we watch a different horror movie leading up to Halloween. Like, we're decorated our yard with like giant killer spiders. It's going to be a good year. 2020 may have sucked so far, but Halloween is going to kick ass.
Yeah.
This is going to be, Halloween and 2021, those are going to be killer years. I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it. So, John, we have decided in our High Five Halloween special to do a top 5 list that speaks to something you know a little bit about, and that is ghosts. So we have decided to do a top 5 ghost movies list for this episode. Now, if I can ask, as someone who created an entire series around ghosts, what is your interest in ghosts? What happened to you?
We need to know.
You need to know. I've always loved horror since I was a little kid. There was a big movie theater. I grew up in Brooklyn, and there was a big movie theater called the Fortway. And I grew up in the 70s, and movie theaters were really falling on hard times then. So it was like a former movie palace. It still had all the old plaster and the gargoyles, but it was really run down and crappy. And I used to go as a kid. They would have a horror double feature every Saturday. And I would beg my mother for the money. And, if I didn't get it, I would steal it. I would go to see that horror double bill. And the movie theater's long gone now, of course, like so many movie theaters. But I just have so many great memories. And sometimes I went with my friends. It was great. But none of them were as devoted as I was to horror. So I was going alone with friends, didn't matter. I'm there. And I always remember in this movie theater, they had this kind of iridescent, this sort of like a glow-in-the-dark clock up on one of the side walls with almost like military-style numbers, and it glowed in green. And when things got too scary for me on the screen, I would just kind of avert my eyes over and stare at that clock until I had a sense that the carnage was ending and it was safe for me to look at that. And the amazing thing was, like, how many years later, 40 years later, whatever, I was at a film festival in upstate New York, and in one of the theaters, there was that same clock.
Oh.
I couldn't believe it. The exact same clock. There's like a million pictures of it.
What?
Yeah,
So you have to tell me you went back to that theater. You have that clock and it's in your house, right?
I wish. Don't think I didn't ask. But, I couldn't.
All right. Well, that's our goal for the High Five Christmas special. We're going to hunt down this clock and we're going to gift that to you.
Yeah.
It would be a
forever.
That's wild. Now I have to ask the experience of, and I don't think I'm the only one here in the group that's seen the show. I may be the only one who has watched the show multiple times through. But what was the experience like getting your show from creation to the screen, to what we saw on the screen, and ultimately through the run and story of the show as a fan? Is it in totality the story that you had hoped to tell or started out to tell, or did it change kind of significantly through that process?
Well, I can say that when we started out, and first of all, about, just going back to horror for a second, because, I love horror, but to answer your question about ghosts,
sure,
specifically, what's always attracted me to that idea is the sense that, on the more poignant side of things, a ghost is someone you love, a ghost who's trying to tell you something, or someone you're trying to get information from, closure and all those kinds of emotional things that tie into ghosts as well. And I've always been very interested in that. And then when I stumbled on Ghost Whisperer, and the way I got that show was that at that time, and this was like in 2005, I think, I had been making many, many movies for TV for CBS, kind of like big high profile, big movies for them. And one of the executives said to me, we had this woman, we flew her in from Ohio to clear a ghost out of one of our executives' houses. And, totally straight face, and she said, I think you should meet her because she's really interesting. And maybe there's a show there. Yeah, I don't know. And so I happened to be in LA at the time, and Marianne, her name was Marianne, and she was still there in LA. So I went to meet her at a Starbucks, and I met her. I knew her husband was going to be there as well. And so I walk into the Starbucks, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, okay, so I'm expecting to see somebody with a, caftan, some sort of crazy looking. But instead, I finally settled on this table where there was this very, very kind of, large woman, just salt of the earth, and sitting next to this guy, clearly an ex-Marine. The first hint was the big Marine tattoo on his bicep and a brush cut.
Don't give it away.
And I thought, this can't be like, what? This is the ghost couple? So I sat down with them, and Marianne was just the most wonderful, down-to-earth, real person. And, she just said to me, yeah, this is my gift. I see ghosts who have not crossed over. If you've crossed over, I can't
Sure.
see you. If you're still here, I see you. And I was kind of, so they're just all around all the time. She said, oh, yeah. I said, how about right now in this Starbucks? Oh, there's 5 here right now.
Okay.
5 ghosts in this Starbucks.
That had been my question too.
And then she started pointing out that I'm pretty sure this older woman here, it's probably her son. He looks very upset. He's trying to get her attention. And this is a young woman. And she went through the history of all these ghosts,
Whoa.
And that scene ended up in the pilot. I actually wrote that in the pilot.
I was about to say, I was like, that sounds eerily familiar.
Yeah. So I went away from that meeting thinking, wow, this could be great. This could be a chance for me to meld my love of horror, and particularly gothic horror, old-fashioned scares, not so much like slasher, and to meld that with emotionally driven characters and emotional drama. So I called CBS back. I said, yeah, I'd love to take a crack at this. And so I had these 2 producing partners, Kim Moses and Ian Sanders, who were awesome, wonderful people. And they hired me to write the pilot. And I thought, well, I've never written, because I'd only done movies at that point. So I'd never done television, never done a pilot. I thought, well, this will be fun. It'll go nowhere, but I'll make some money. It'll be fun. So I wrote the pilot, and then the next thing I know is, well, we're going to go ahead and shoot the pilot. Would you direct the pilot? Yes, I will. Okay, I've never directed a pilot. This will come to nothing, but we'll see. So I made the pilot. We had a blast. We just a fantastic time making this pilot, and then we just kind of sat and waited. And the next thing you know, we get a call saying, well, we're going to do 13 episodes, and if we like those, we'll do 9 more.
Awesome.
Okay. Now the panic set in. Now it's like, I've got to do
how do I keep this going?
Right. Yeah.
I got to do this 13 times, maybe 22 times. What?
Right.
I didn't
What,
sign
you think
up
of
for it.
22 ghosts?
Yeah, this was a lark. I didn't mean. And that's how it began. And it sort of caught on and became a successful show, and we had a great time making it. Made it a universal backlot, and it was a great family of people on that show. Very consistent, and it was great.
I will say, as a fan too, it spoke to me and it helped me because I too tend to shy away from horror that is too intense. Jay, on the other hand, is like a horror hound. The scarier and the grittier and grimier, the better.
Right.
Mia, where do you fall on the horror spectrum?
I am the no horror spectrum.
Oh, got it. Okay, perfect.
I am the no horror spectrum.
Anti-horror.
Which honestly is probably
You're on the wrong show.
John, she's probably bringing our average down to the national median. Like, it's probably very good that we have someone who doesn't just gush over it the whole time.
Yeah.
On the show. Oh my goodness.
But the show struck a beautiful tone, and I think it was perfect in kind of what you said, that it had that horror and that scary kind of gothic feel, but at the same time you had it coupled with these very like emotional, character driven kind of performances and stories. And I loved that. That for me, that's the most interesting kind of horror, is the story driven and the character driven. And one thing that I'm dying to know is, in your meeting with Marianne to the directing and shooting of the pilot, where did Jennifer Love Hewitt come from? Was that a studio suggestion? Was that
question.
a you?
Yeah, it was a studio suggestion. Originally we, I guess I, looked at the part of someone older. I thought it'd be interesting to join someone who's already in their life and having their life and already, in doing this. And we were looking at people like Lucy Liu and people in that range. And we got a lot of passes. People weren't available. They didn't want to do horror. And a lot of actors, and rightly so, as it turns out, are really terrified of doing broadcast network television, because it's 22 episodes, sometimes even 24 episodes. You carry every show. There's very little time off, long hours. It's brutal. You do that for 5 years and you're dead. So, a lot of actors just don't want to do it. Today it's all very different, because now with streaming, you can do the show in 8 episodes or 10 episodes.
Right.
Maybe 12.
Sure.
Now you can land these giant actors because, oh, great, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But at any rate, Jennifer's name had come up. It had been floated earlier at one point, and we loved that idea. We knew it meant going in a different way, going younger, because I think she was like 26 at the time.
Sure.
But she at first wasn't available. She had some other show. There was a commitment. There was something. And so we kept looking, and we kept testing actresses all over town to try to get the right quality. And then we got a call from CBS saying, hey, guess what? That project just fell out that Jennifer was doing, and you want to talk about this. And so that's how we brought her in. She was lovely. She was fantastic. She was excited about it. She loved the character, loved the whole idea of the show.
Sure.
And then we just sort of reworked the whole concept now. Now this is somebody just starting out in their life, just getting married.
Yeah.
And with this gift or curse.
Yeah. I'll be completely transparent. It was the Jennifer Love Hewitt aspect that brought me to the show initially, as I had a crush on her at the time. It's like, oh, well, she did that little stint on Boy Meets World as the guest star. Great horror episode of that show. Oh, she's in another horror thing. It's like a ghost-based thing. All right, I'll give it a shot. So yeah, I was in because of the casting. Although, John, I'll tell you, as you were talking initially, in my head, I was thinking, well, this could go a couple of ways. One, in the nowadays era, that's a reality show. That woman you met at the Starbucks, you just follow her around with the camera. It's like Dog the Bounty Ghost Whisperer. You gotta love it. The other is you do a more accurate to who you met version and have like a Margot Martindale in there. I would watch her ghost hunting. Right. I would love watching her ghost hunt around. That's exactly right. There's a lot of in this concept. I love it.
Yeah.
So exactly I have to ask too. I have so many questions. One of the things that I'm curious about, Jay and I have talked many times on this show about kind of what do they call it? Thinking that is along the same lines. So you end up with two movies that are very similar. You end up with a Armageddon and a Deep Impact, for example.
Yeah.
And I have a question because your show launched the same year as Medium launched.
Yes.
Did you guys have like a high school rivalry style, like hate for each other? Were you like, oh yeah, well, I'll see your ghost show and I'll raise you my ghost show.
And I'm also going to TP your house.
Right. We really ignored each other, honestly. But the funny thing was that I think it was at the point at which I had completed the pilot and we were just waiting now for CBS to tell us yes or no. And I got a call from a friend of mine and he knew about the show I was doing. And he went, hey man, I thought your show was on CBS. I just saw a promo on NBC for it. I said, no, you're on CBS. No, I just saw it. There was a woman in bed with her husband and her bed was surrounded by ghosts. I saw this. You couldn't have. I did. So, I tune in NBC now like an idiot and I stare at it for like an hour and a half until I see that promo. And I'm just shocked. I just felt like this is our show. I didn't know anything yet. It was police procedural and all that kind of thing. I just saw a man and a woman about the same age, and ghosts.
Sure.
And I called my producers, and then they weren't aware of it either. And then we called the network, and they said, "Oh yeah, we know about that show. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. That's not gonna last."
Well, both shows ended up going.
Don't worry about it, since I've had 7 heart attacks.
Right.
I won't. We're going to need Jennifer Love Hewitt to come talk to me because I am officially dead now. Well, I love it. I love the show. Like I said, I was a big fan. Have you kind of dipped your toe back into the horror realm post Ghost Whisper, or is that something that's on your radar to do?
Very much so. In fact, I had written a script called The Desecrated, which is a horror feature that we're still trying to raise money for. And I made a 7-minute proof of concept short, basically like a sample scene from the movie. Try to give producers and financiers a sense of how scary it could be, that kind of thing. And the short came out really well. And in fact, we got such good feedback from it, we decided to just start putting it into film festivals. And it started doing really well, won awards. So that really actually got me kind of on this short film kick, which I've been on ever since.
Sure.
And I try to make a short film at least every year, 2 if I can manage it. And I just made a little horror short called Household. We just finished in July, and that's now on the festival circuit as well. And we're still trying to get that Desecrated made as a feature. So I'm still, keenly interested in that genre, and I will get this movie made sooner or later.
I love it.
Well,
I'll tell you this: if you need 3 podcasters for your movie at any point, you just let us know. We're really good at playing ourselves.
Yeah, I know.
That sounds awesome. So, do you personally have any? That's a good segue. Do you personally have any horror or weird ghosty anecdotes that have maybe happened to you in your own life? Or are you like, nah, ghosts are not real. Definitively, they do not exist.
I definitely believe in ghosts. And I don't really theorize about how there are ghosts or why there are ghosts. Because I don't think we'll ever know.
Sure.
But I personally believe in them. And I've had some experiences. But the interesting one, I think the most germane to the show is that my wife and I had bought a house in Nyack just before we started Ghost Whisperer. In fact, I think we moved in we moved in the same year. And so, I'd always lived in New York, but I work in LA constantly. And so I was doing the pilot in LA, and we were shooting in the city of Orange, which is a little bit outside of LA proper. Sure. And my wife was at home. She was going to join me, but wasn't going to come for another week or two. And so she calls me one night, and I'm in my hotel room, middle of the night, like, what? And she was telling me that the doorbell wouldn't stop ringing at our house. Huh. And I thought, all right, so it's a weird thing, and it's a new house, who knows? And she said, no. I cut the cord from the doorbell, and it still will not stop. Oh, I see. And then there were the footsteps up and down the stairs, and she said, like, when she lied in our bedroom, which is right below our attic, she could hear what sounded like furniture being moved back and forth.
No, thank you.
Yeah. And
no,
course,
thank you.
Our attic, it's about this wide, our attic. You can't.
Sure.
It's like a John Malkovich like level like floor. You can't really be doing much in there.
Right. Exactly. And so, footsteps again. Coming up and down the stairs. Somebody up in the attic, and then in the basement, we had our laundry machines in the basement. And really creepy things happened there. The laundry machine, she'd find them in a slightly different place every time she came down, giant heavy machines. And then what tore it one night was that everything went off at once. The doorbell, the cut doorbell, smoke alarms, CO2 alarms, burglar alarm that we didn't even know was hooked up. And in the basement, the boiler started shaking like off its foundations, like rocking.
What? And that's when you moved, right?
Yep.
She got
immediately.
She went to a hotel.
Yeah.
She went to a hotel.
Yeah. See, that's so smart. I love that in real life she did that. Now, okay, I have to ask John, because you've written you've written ghost stories and you've written these characters, and there's always in those stories the guy who's like, oh no, everything's fine. Like, I'll look into it. It's the wiring. Were you ever during this situation, that guy where you're like, oh yeah, no, everything's totally fine? Or were you like, no, it's ghosts? Because that's what I would do. Immediately I'd be like, oh, it's ghosts. Immediately.
When I started with the doorbell, I just thought, okay, it's a new house. I mean, it's not a new house, but it's a new house for us.
Right.
So who knows what it's all about. And when she said she cut the cord, I thought, okay, all right. So maybe there's a battery backup somewhere. And then the other stuff started happening. And then I remembered before I left for LA, we're just getting settled in the house. And I had, my daughter then was about maybe 6 or 7, I think. And I was making her breakfast. And she had these little cardboard puzzle pieces that she liked to play with. And on one side was a design that you fit into this puzzle. Right. The other side was just blank cardboard. So I was clearing her breakfast dishes away, and she was playing with the puzzle, and it just kind of sat back like she was finished, and all the the colored pieces were up and everything. I go to the sink, I put a thing in the sink, a plate in the sink. I go back to the table, and now all the pieces are upside down with the blank cardboard facing up. And these are all separate pieces. She couldn't possibly have turned over each and every one.
What?
While I was at the sink. It couldn't have happened. And so I kind of looked at it and I thought, nah.
Nope.
And the next thing I know, my wife's calling me with this panicky call. So what happened was that my wife came out to be with me in LA while we did the movie. Then we came back to New York, and I had been talking to Marianne about it. And she said, look, if it gets bad, you want me to come, I'll come. So we go back to the house, and the footsteps are still there, the noise in the attic. And when I went down to the basement, it was just evil down there, man. It was just like cold, and it just smelled like sulfur. It was just, so Marianne, God bless her, we put her on a plane. She flew out, flew to New York, came up to Nyack, and she discovered there was a mother and son living in the house. They didn't like us. They liked the people who lived there before us better. They'd like us to leave. Yeah. And they'd like us to have the other people back.
Sure.
And, she sort of found out, a little bit about them, who they were, and this kind of, but ultimately she, in her own words, she got them to leave. She was able to open up a light for them that they could leave, and she convinced them they didn't want to go. Whatever she does, she convinced them to leave. And when she said they're gone, we went back down to the basement, and it was like a whole different place. It was light.
Wow.
It was, the weight of it all was just gone. And we never had a problem after that.
That's
so
insane. I also, the thread that was to me is when you went on Zillow and all the reviews were like, these owners are terrible, from user definitely not a ghost.
Right.
Mia, I need to hear a ghost story from Mia.
Yes, please.
Okay, so as I elbow myself, I don't really have any. I had a partial scare, actually not too long ago, and it was not there was a science to it for sure because I tested it. But I came back home from a trip, and I went to bed, and I've always had trouble sleeping. I'm a very paranoid person. I also have really good hearing. None of it works in my favor, which is why I don't watch scary movies, because then everything is heightened and we're just, it's not a good time for me.
Makes sense now. Yeah.
And I went to bed. I was having trouble sleeping. And at one point I was just like, okay, I'm just going to wake up. But I turned over and I looked up and my fan was spinning. And I was like, I didn't turn on the fan before I went to bed. Why is the fan spinning? Turned out because I run hot when I'm in bed, so I'm constantly sweating. So I have a ceiling fan, I have a side fan. I had slept in such a way that the current from the side fan had blown up and was hitting the ceiling fan to move. And I had tested it later, because I was not testing it right at that point. I just got up out of my room and I was like,
oh, I didn't want an explanation. I wanted it to be ghosts.
I'm gonna be honest, Mia. It sounds to me like you tried to make that scientific explanation work, and my personal professional opinion, it was definitely ghosts. So I hate to break it to you, ghosts. Jay, do you have any personal spooky anecdotes you'd like to share?
I do. Both Amanda and I are both big ghost people. I believe in. I'm John. I'm very similar to you. As I believe that there is something, whether they exist as ghosts as we think of them, or whatever. I don't know what they are, but I know something like ghosts exist. And whether that's embodiment of past personalities or spirits or whatever it is. I remember the story that I have personally is that I was very young. I was like 13 or 14. And I had gone to spend the night at my friend's house. And this is before I knew any of the stories about my friend's house. Turns out there were a lot of haunted-esque things that happened at this house that I was not privy to, because apparently they didn't tell their friends that before they had sleepovers, because friends didn't like to stay. So I found all this out later. But I came down in the middle of the night while sleeping at this friend's house for some milk or a bathroom break or whatever. And I looked out back at their pool area, and there was just an old, shiny, sepia-toned man standing there with a fedora hat and a vest, and I could kind of hazily see him in the backyard just smoking a pipe, and he kind of raised the pipe at me. And I just was convinced it was a dream, convinced I was crazy, whatever. Went to bed, came back down the next morning. I was like, there's no way this happened. And then the next morning, when we were eating breakfast, my friend was like, hey, anything weird happened to you last night? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, a lot of people think this house is haunted. Did you see anything weird last night? And I was like, you know what? Come to mention it. I came down last night around whatever time, and there was a man standing in your backyard. And right then, his older sister walked in, and I had not told this to anybody. And she's like, oh, was he in that back corner smoking a pipe, wearing a fedora and an Ornette-looking vest? And I was like,
no.
Fuck you, yeah. That's exactly what he looked like. She's like, yeah, I see him every month. And I was like, I don't like any of this. What is happening? And it was the weirdest sequence of events because I had not told anybody that it had happened and had definitely not told my friend what he was wearing. And so for the sister who didn't really like me at the time to be like, oh yeah, I remember your nightmare, is really freaky.
Yikes. Turns out it was actually just her boyfriend.
Right.
That's his pipe smoking spot in the yard. She's like,
That's
once
how
a month, I let him come and smoke his pipe in the yard to freak out my little brother's friends.
I was going to say, that's how he gets away with sneaking into her bedroom, is he just paints himself in sepia tones.
Like a ghost?
And when he gets caught, he's like, no, I'm a ghost. I'm not making out with your daughter. Woo! And he like backs out of the room.
Totally not a real person.
Right.
Why is
I
my
love
daughter's
that.
mouth around and covered in sepia paint?
Yes.
Does that mean that you have a story?
Oh my God. Do I have a story? I have like archives of stories. John, you could make a sequel series about my life called The Ghost Worrier. I have so many stories. So my family believes in this thing called, well,
Ghosts.
They've always called it, ever since I was a little kid, they've called ghost lanterns. And the idea is that certain people are like lanterns to the spirit world. And so ghosts are like attracted to them. They can see their light and they come to it. So I've been told this ever since.
Insidious-esque.
Very. So I've been told this ever
like
since
it.
I was a little kid. And my dad grew up in upstate New York. He grew up in Sleepy Hollow, to be exact.
Perfect.
And his family bought an old mortuary and turned it into their house. I'm not making this up. This is all 100% true. And he, as a kid, he was a teenager when they moved in, and there was a coffin left, obviously not a used coffin. And he convinced his parents to let him drag it into his bedroom, and he used to sleep in it at night because he was like a weird goth kid at the time, and he'd like to freak his friends out. So anyway, he had a whole plethora of things happen to him, and I heard about them all growing up, and it used to scare the bejesus out of me. Fast forward to me being a parent, probably one of my scariest encounters. I have, who is now a 13-year-old daughter. When she was a baby, my wife at the time and I were living in an apartment or in a townhouse, and we had it was a 2-bedroom townhouse. My daughter had her nursery, and then we had our bedroom, and there was a conjoining bathroom that ran in between the two. And one night we were sleeping, and my daughter was probably about 10 or 11 months old. And she was in a crib, but it was transitioning into like a bed. And so she was asleep. We were asleep. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake to like the worst thing that a parent wants to hear, which is my child screaming like at the top of her lungs, like not a upset scream, but like a hurt scream. And so I just jump out of bed, and I am like panicking, and I'm like, what's going on? And I run through the bathroom into her bedroom, and I immediately run over to her crib area, and it's empty. And I just hear screaming. I can still hear it as if she's like in my head. That's how loud the screaming is. And I'm panicking, and I'm like, why is she not in her? And I'm yelling for my wife. And I was like, where's Gabby? Where's Gabby? And she comes running into the room, and she's like, what do you mean? I can hear her. So we're both hearing my daughter screaming. We can't find her. So all of a sudden the scream sounds like it's moving, like it's traveling. It's no longer in the room. It's now downstairs. So we throw open my daughter's bedroom. We're running downstairs. The back door is ajar. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody has snuck into my house and stole my child. And so I throw open the back door, and I'm running. Like, I just take off running, and I can hear her still. Nothing. Like, I can find nothing. So I run back to the house, and I'm like, I have the phone in hand. I'm going to call 911 somebody has abducted my kid. And Danny was like, wait. It sounds like she's in her room again. And I was like, what? And so we go back up into her room, and I like pause, and my heart is going a million miles an hour, and I'm like listening, like, where is this sound coming from? And I get down on the floor and I look under her crib, which, to be fair, is probably about 45 pounds. And she is wedged under her crib. I have no idea. Obviously, she's a child. She cannot lift this herself. There's no way she could have squeezed under there. It is, to this day, one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever undergone in my entire life. I picked her up, and we immediately had the house blessed the next day. Like, legitimately, I was like, there is something going on in our house. So we had a sage burn. We had holy water put over the doorways. Like, it legitimately, I was like, something evil's in here. I never had a problem in that house again, but that was by far the most terrifying supernatural experience that I've had.
Does she have any memory of it?
She doesn't, but what's weird is, so as she got older, well, you won't think this is crazy because you had a friend who's a psychic. As she grew up, she used to tell us about people that she would see in her room. And she also seemed to have some sort of premonition or clairvoyant kind of thing. And it lasted until she was about 8 years old, and then it seemed to kind of disappear. But we were never like, no, you don't. Those are imaginary friends. We always were like, okay, so tell us, like, what did they say? What did they do? Yeah. So much so to the point at one time, and not to just take up the whole podcast with stories, but a friend of ours, father passed away suddenly, unexpectedly. And she had gone to spend time with that friend at her house. And Gabby walked out. She was about 6. She walked outside on the patio while she was visiting, and she started talking to this bird that had landed on the railing on the patio, and started laughing. And Holly, who was the woman who was watching her, asked what she was doing. And she was like, oh, I'm talking to your dad, and he said that he loves you. And she was like, excuse me? And she was like, yeah, he like that was not strange. Like, this bird is your dad. Like, that's normal. And Holly called me in tears, and she's like, my dad was an avid bird watcher, and your daughter just told me that a bird on my patio was my dad and that he loves me. She had no knowledge that he had passed away. So, like, there was a level to her, you know, seeing these things that I was like, okay, I mean, I guess this is a thing. And growing up my whole life, having been told that our family attracts these kind of things, it didn't really surprise me. And then, like I said, around 8 or 9, it kind of faded out, and she never really had any stories to tell us past that. Yeah. But yeah, so there was something with that child for sure.
She lost the shine.
That could have been a total Ghostbusters episode, no problem.
Like I said, if you ever want to make a sequel series, Ghost Warrior,
you talk to us.
I will be happy to regale you with all of my stories, for sure. Speaking of
favor,
ghosts,
I got you.
Speaking of ghosts, I think this is a perfect segue into the list topic. So every episode, John, we sit down, and Mia, since this is your first episode, I'll explain it to you too. Yeah. Every episode, we sit down and we try to come up with a top 5 list. Hence the name of the show, High Five. This is our high five of whatever subject matter that we choose, whether it's, you know, top 5 Denzel Washington movies, top 5 Jennifer Love Hewitt movies, top 5, ghost stories or monsters. And for this particular episode, we have chosen the top 5 ghost movies. Now, one of the most important things that we discuss before revealing our lists is kind of the criteria that you would use when compiling your list in your head. So, you know, would a Ghostbusters count as a ghost movie versus a movie like Poltergeist, for example, that is more centrally about a scary ghost or about a team of people hunting ghosts? And John, what would you consider to be a ghost movie in your mind?
Well, first of all, I'll just say that the criteria for me is really simple, and especially when it comes to what's the, one of the best, up there. It's just very simple. What has scared me the most?
Oh, sure.
Sitting there in my seat, what has terrified me? And that's it. That's all the criteria I need.
Yeah.
I love it. Sweet and simple.
That's it. There's plenty of them.
I love it.
I mean,
or Joey,
I was gonna say, Mia, as the person who doesn't watch horror movies, how do you approach your list?
This is going to be a very short list for Mia.
Well, especially if if in your definition of it, and me, I'm not saying you did this, but if you define it in a way that you can't or didn't include things like Ghostbusters, to use example, how did you approach this? I'm interested as someone who doesn't watch these.
I was like, anything that has ghosts that I've watched, that's gonna
Nailed
be
it.
You're like, which happened to be 5 movies, so it worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, now I'll alter it, but I'll have a top 4 instead of the top 5.
That's pretty awesome. I love it. Jay, what was
Yeah.
your criteria in making your list?
Honestly, I'll open it up. For me, it was anything that had a central focus or a story that was around or about ghosts. Whether that was a comedic movie or whether that was a horrific movie, whether that was, whatever it was. Pretty much the only thing I eliminated were TV shows because, Haunting of Hill House, and I haven't watched The Bly House yet. But anything that's a film that centers around a ghost or stories about ghosts. That was basically what I stuck to.
I totally agree with you, and I don't want to skirt over it, but I will totally plug both The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor. Both I have watched now, both completely individual stories that shouldn't be compared to each other, but I will recommend to all of you, very, very good. Solid ghost stories.
I mean, Hill House was amazingly good.
It was, and Bly Manor is something totally different. It's like a love story almost, a tragic love story.
I watched the first episode last night of Bly Manor, and I'm gonna watch another one tonight. But I was worried that it was a little slow.
Yeah, and
it felt a bit plodding to me.
It is, and I will tell you this: it takes until about the 3rd or 4th episode before it really starts to gain its footing.
Yeah.
But once it gets in there, it's definitely one that you're like, I want to see what happens next. Kind of thing, for sure.
At this point, I'll watch anything that Mike Flanagan makes, so I'm 100% in on this show.
Talented fella. So for me, my criteria was this. It was kind of a mix of all of the above. On my list, I had movies that scared the crap out of me. I have movies that meant a lot to me, but mostly it are the movies that impacted me the most, whether that be made me laugh hilariously and I think of them all the time, whether it be they terrified me so much that I wet my bed for 3 months in a row, whatever it is. They're movies that impacted me. So my list is directly derivative of movies that had an impact on me. And so I say, Jay, you had a great idea for the way to do lists a little bit differently this time. We'll kick it to each one of us, and we'll each give our 5 through 4, saving that number 1 for last.
5 through 2s.
Oh, excuse me. You're right. 5 through 2s. 5 through 4 would be a very short list.
Super short.
Everybody will give their 5 through 2, and then we will all reveal our number 1. And in the very unlikely chance that we all share the same number 1, we may have the most amazing Jinxies episode ever.
Where we all come back together and watch the movie together.
Watch the movie.
What if someone's number 3 is somebody else's number 1?
Then they just have to fight to the death.
So what we do, John, traditionally on the show is, since the show is called High 5 and not technically High 20, which we will have at the end of this, we have to, and this is why I warned you, we kill our darlings on this show. We take all of our individual lists and we whittle them down to one master High 5 list. So somebody, if we share ones, then usually that one automatically makes the top list.
Right.
So we'll take a crack at it and see what we got here. So John, as our guest of honor, I would love it if you would go first and grace us with your 5 through 2 choices.
I would say, so starting with the least, okay. I would probably say Insidious.
Okay, sure.
Very good.
Very
Good,
scary movie.
modern,
well
very
done.
good modern horror. Yeah.
Yeah,
Those guys have a handle on, I think, what makes a good horror movie. Those two.
Very
Those two.
much.
Leo Whannell for sure.
next, I would probably go for The Others. Next.
Oh, Nicole Kidman,
Mm,
2001. That was a great movie.
yeah, I just watched that again the other night. So
It still
well
holds
done.
up.
Subtle. It really
Well,
does.
as a fan of Gothic horror, I can see that being really
Yeah,
appealing to you.
absolutely. Then I'd probably have to go for. I have to go for the Vincent Price version of House on Haunted Hill.
I watched that 2 nights ago,
Did you
John.
really? Did you?
I love that movie.
Me
I
too.
watched it 2 nights ago.
Me
It
too.
is so good.
It's a real. I mean, I haven't seen it in many years, but
When
I
he
remember-
comes out with he comes out with like those gears and things.
Right, yes, right.
It's just beautiful.
I will say that the movie is terrible, but the remake that came out in the 2000s with Jeffrey Rush, I will say that Jeffrey Rush was doing a great Vincent Price.
It's way better than the Haunting remake that got made. Like the Haunting, a good movie, and the remake, which was,
Yeah.
what it was.
So
Ooh,
what-
this is a solid list so far. I like this.
Is this
You're-
we're up to 3 now?
I think-
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're at 2.
So you have your number
Okay.
2.
I would probably have to go for The Ring.
Ooh, solid. Now, are we
Yeah.
talking Ring or Ringu, like the Japanese version?
It could alternate as far as I'm concerned because I
Yeah,
felt
sure.
they were both really good.
Yeah.
Whereas I thought the
Agreed.
Japanese Grudge was far better than the American Grudge.
I have that
I
same
will
exact opinion.
Totally agree. You're in good company here with those opinions. I'll tell you that.
Well, I love it.
Uh,
Mia.
I love that 100%. So, all right. So, guest of honor, John gave us his 5 through 2. Mia, as our brand new christened host on High Five the podcast, would you mind gracing us with your very limited viewing of ghost movies? top 4
Okay.
or bottom 4?
So yes, bottom 4. It would be if I'm going based off just ones that I've seen and then impacted stuff, it would be number 5 is The Sixth Sense.
Nice. Good movie.
4 would be Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Nice.
3
Yep.
would be Ghost.
like the Patrick
nice.
Swayze ghost.
Yes.
Excellent.
Impact on her. She's that's why she took up pottery. Now we know.
That's the only way that I can make pots now. I have to have somebody standing over me and holding
Gotta have it.
my
Gotta
hands
have
while
it.
I do it.
Specifically, the Righteous Brothers playing.
It's also the only way that I like to interact with my wife through Whoopi Goldberg.
As a medium.
My number 2 is Sleepy Hollow.
Oh,
nice.
Mia, that's a pretty gruesome movie for you.
I
Did you watch
I
it by
love
accident?
Johnny Depp and Christina Ricci in that movie.
Okay, that's fair.
That's what I was about,
Yeah.
really.
I
Yeah.
love that. Honestly, Mia, that is you're like you pool sharked us on this. I was thinking you're gonna come in with like, some I don't Casper. But you gave some really solid choices. You and John are really killing it so far with the list. Jay,
Thank you.
what do you have that can
Okay.
add up to these?
Okay, so I jumped around a lot. My number 5 is just one that is a personal favorite. I love it. I watch it probably once a year, but it is Peter Jackson's The Frighteners. I love
sure.
Michael J. Fox in that movie. I love Chi McBride in that movie. I think the whole premise of it mixes humor and the horror great. So
A
yeah,
great
that
Jake
one for
Busey
me.
performance.
very creepy Jake Busey performance.
For
So
sure.
yeah,
The
that
creepiest
one
of
for me
Jake
is number
Busey
5.
performances, maybe.
My number 4 went back and forth because I wanted a classic on there. Like, John, I debated the Haunting of Hill House, which is very good. I debated something like The Orphanage, which is one of my favorite Guillermo del Toro movies. But what I landed on was The Changeling. With of Scott. Man, The Changeling is so creepy. It's so good. It's one of those that's kind of like a classic. It was either going to be that or The Haunting, the original The Haunting.
Right.
But The Changeling is so creepy, and it's one of those where when you find out the reveal and you realize what's been going on, it's just really impactful as well, which The Orphanage has going for it too, so I just love, I don't know. It has everything that I want out of a classic ghost story. And then number 3, getting up into the classics, is number 3 is Poltergeist. That movie scared the living crap out of me as a kid. The scene when he's picking at his face in the mirror.
Oh God.
The skeletons in the pool, which were actual human skeletons. Come on, Hollywood. That's great. And just top tier ghosts. And this house is clear. I love it. Love it. And Q, your story your story of Gabby always, whenever you tell it, reminds me of something that happened, like Poltergeist happens in that movie, is where is my kid's voice coming from? I'm going to chase it around.
I'll tell you this. I wish it was Zelda Rubinstein that came to my house to like burn sage and bless my doorways.
Don't we all?
That would have been awesome. I would have happily provided her a step stool to get on over the top of my doorway.
Perfect. All right. So, and that leaves me with 2, right? All right.
Yep.
So my number 2, I actually have in common with one on Mia's list. My number 2 is Ghostbusters. For sheer rewatchability. I love the Ghostbusters. I mean, Q, you and I talk about it all the time. It's just, I can't not have a list about ghosts and have the Ghostbusters on there. I mean, it has genuine scares.
I like that you like smoothly kind of leaned with the reveal. Librarian.
But it's got like genuine scares. It's funny as all get out. It's, one that we can watch year after year. Yeah, that's my number.
I love it.
2.
I love it. And John, you're about to find out exactly why we needed to have a third host, because Joey, our lists are just too similar, my man. Like we're very too similar. So my number 5 is also The Frighteners. It is a wonderful Peter Jackson movie. It has some killer special effects for the time. Some of them still hold up. The like carpet and wall crawl, maybe not so much, but the ghost, the Chi McBride ghost apparition that follows around Michael J. Fox still looks great for sure. Very freaky, funny movie. My number 5 is Poltergeist. Because also that movie scared the crap out of me as a child. Especially as a child that like spent 99% of my time in front of a tube television. I was very concerned that I too would get beckoned to the other side. And I'm sure from time to time, my mom kind of hoped that I would, honestly.
She comes in, you're touching the TV. She's like, yes. Aww.
She's like, go. What was the little girl's name? Carrie Ann. She also would weirdly call me Carrie Ann. I couldn't figure that out. So my number 3 is The Sixth Sense. We recently talked about that movie on an episode. I love the layers that are built into that film. I think it's a very smartly done film. And I think it's a very interesting way to portray ghosts. It was the first time that I had seen in memory ghosts that didn't know they were ghosts and didn't necessarily have to be like these ghoulish figures. Not that there weren't ghoulish figures in that movie, but they were also just like normal looking people, like still trying to go to work and ride their bike and go on the bus. And I like that concept. I like just like the doldrums of being a ghost. And my number 2 is Ghostbusters.
Yay!
Because no ghost list would be complete without literally having the movie that has ghost in the title. And Mia, you also managed to nail that. twice on your list, Ghost and Ghostbusters.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Ghostbusters for me, it's an awesome movie. It's a lightning in a bottle comedy. I don't think, they tried to do it again with Ghostbusters 2, which I still very much enjoy, but it wasn't the same. And who knows if they'll ever capture that magic again. Fingers crossed for the upcoming Ghostbusters that releases now, I guess, in 2021. I would love to see how that movie turns out. So this brings us to the most important of our lists, our number one
favorite ghost movie.
This is what will be engraved on our individual tombstones when we die. It is what we'll be remembered for. John, what is your number one top ghost movie?
My number one top ghost movie is The Babadook.
Oh my gosh. Great pull. Now I feel stupid because I didn't put that movie on my list.
I don't have it on mine either, but it's so good. Oh, that movie was affecting, John. I'll give you that.
That scared the hell out of me.
Man, so good.
Legitimately.
It's so original. Just really original. And
so original and such a small story. But a really affecting story and horrors on multiple levels.
Well, that's why it works. That's why it's one of the best, is it embodies what's best about the greatest horror movies, like, Rosemary's Baby or The Omen, is it embodies and personifies a real fear or a real grief or it embodies something horrific about life. And the best horror movies work on that level. And that one, it just is like the best modern example of that. That and It Follows are very similar in that regard.
And also, when there's a strong emotional connection between the characters.
Yeah.
That mother and son of the Babadook, man. If you don't care about them, you don't care. You're
lost on the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why, to me, that movie was so brilliant, because it was their connection was so powerful, and it made the horror.
Well, between that and The Orphanage, that and the others and some that you mentioned, John, like, I can tell that character driven is really, really important to like how you view this. So that's awesome.
We may be making room on our master list for that one, even though it wasn't on my list. I may be willing to kill off one of my choices. Mia, hit us with your number one choice.
My number one choice was based solely off of how long it terrified me. It is not a movie I enjoyed at all. It's the one that had the most impact on my sleep. And because I don't watch very many scary movies in general, it ended up being Paranormal Activity.
Oh,
ooh.
I was forced to sit down and watch that one because I was convinced it's not so bad.
Sure. a somewhat realistic approach to a ghost story. Such a weird modern twist. Haley had never seen those movies. We watched it the other night. Pretty affecting.
The whole series
is
intriguing. Yeah.
The first one
works.
Super works. It super duper works. I don't know. I can't speak to where the series goes post the first one, but it was a very clever conceit, very well done, and it gives you those real world scares. You never really see anything, and that's kind of the scariest part of it. Is it's just that looming dread throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
So Jay.
All right. My number two is just a favorite of
number
mine.
one.
It's a favorite ghost story. Oh man,
mine are
one.
Number two.
Sorry,
I need number one.
You already have my number two. My number one is one of my favorite movies of all time, but favorite ghost stories is The Shining.
Oh sure.
Yeah, my number one is Jack Torrance. I mean, Q and the listeners know I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and even I love the book for what it is, but man, Kubrick in the Overlook Hotel, it is one that scares me to this day, and I've seen it dozens of times. The acting is phenomenal, the pacing, the cinematography, everything about it. And even when you start to get into the mysticism of like the room, the theories of what's happening in the movie and the way he filmed it and all, it's just, there's layers upon layers of enjoyment to The Shining. And so, yeah, when it comes to ghost stories, I think that's the cream of the crop.
I love it. Solid choices all the way around. My number one is none of those. My number one is the ghost with the most. My number one is Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
This movie means so much to me on so many different levels. John, you wouldn't know this, but my wife and I last year got married on Halloween. We are also big Halloween fans. We got married on Halloween at the Alamo Draft House, where I hosted a screening of Beetlejuice. And we got married in front of an audience of 250 unsuspecting wedding guests. It was awesome. So Beetlejuice definitely on a very personal level ranks very, very high. It's a cleverly written movie. It's killer performances, set design, costume design is out of this world, literally. It's just an awesome movie top to bottom. So that's why it made my number one. Now I'm so excited because this is the best part. This is where we get to just murder viciously.
How do we even do this
list? Well, I think for sure Babadook needs to be on the list. No matter what, it's got to happen. That was a solid choice, and I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, I'm sad that it wasn't on my list. So right now I'm going to put it as a placeholder at number 4, and we'll go from there.
All right, John, are there any that you liked on our lists that you think deserve a place on the master list?
I think the Frighteners.
Yeah. Yeah,
Can
I'll
that
put
be
that
a
at
solid
number
5?
We both shared that. Okay.
And I think the Orphanage.
Orphanage.
I liked that one. Let me see. Yeah. All right. Let me see. Oh, now I've got to put out there, Q, both you and Mia shared The Sixth Sense.
Yes.
Around number 3-ish. So
Yeah,
I would say.
I feel like it should be on there just by like majority rules, I guess.
Yeah, I would think so. That
it's not really a majority rules. It's like halfsies, but.
What if we scooched everything up and had Babadook at 3, Frighteners at 4, and then Sixth Sense at 5?
Yeah,
okay,
I'd be fine with that. Okay. And then we've got to put Ghostbusters on there for sure. It was shared.
Yes.
Three-way tie.
Yeah, that was. I mean, that's probably 2.
And I have no idea what to put as number 1.
Yeah, I don't know. Just all of them. All of our was.
Yeah,
like a
maybe we just do a 4-way number 1.
Yeah. Well, The Shining. The Shining.
Beetlejuice.
Juice. Mia, what was yours, Mia?
Mine was Paranormal Activity, but it doesn't have to be on the list. It doesn't have to be up there at number 1.
No, we want it.
Deserves that.
No, that's the way we're doing this.
Okay.
Because this is a Halloween special.
Yeah, it's a freaky episode. Who knows what's gonna happen?
You're right.
Well, how about this? Since the Babadook is sharing the number 1 spot, how about we replace number 3 with Poltergeist, since that was also shared.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm with that. All right.
So that
means we have it, right?
Mm-hmm. I think
give
so.
Us. All right,
Mia,
listeners.
Read it back to us.
This is your definitive top 5 the podcast ghost movie list. Mia.
At number 5, we have The Sixth Sense. At number 4, we have The Frighteners. At number 3, we have Poltergeist. At number 2, we have Ghostbusters.
Sweet.
And at number 1s, we have Paranormal Activity, The Shining, The Babadook, and Beetlejuice.
All right, and here I think it's amazing. The rule is we would normally suggest you go watch all of these movies, and we still do, but we also insist that when you get to the number 1 pick, you watch all 4 movies simultaneously.
4 TVs.
Yes.
You sync them up. What people don't know, and you shouldn't fact check, is that they all sync up perfectly. That is the weird twist of this episode, the giant reveal. This has been an amazing spooktacular, if you will. This officially is the capper to our Spooktoberweentacular, which is what we call the month of October here at High Five the Podcast and how we celebrate it. We've had the amazing addition of Mia to the cast. We're so excited to have you.
Welcome to the family.
We can't wait for people to continue to hear your lists. We will pull back the curtain a little bit. We've already recorded a bunch of episodes, guys, and her lists are
They're
real good.
great.
Thanks.
So good.
And John, we can't thank you enough for joining us. This
Yes,
has been a
thank
real
you. This
pleasure.
has been a blast.
Yes, love it. Love
It's been
it.
wonderful.
And
Well,
like
I'll
I
be
said,
back.
Hopefully, it's a little bit different than the normal press junkets that
Right.
you
Yes, definitely.
and
Much
and
more
like we
fun.
said, if you ever need us in the future, we're really great at being us. But also, if Marianne's not available, we will also come and check out if your house has ghosts. So you just let us
Yeah.
know. We're not trained or anything, but we'll
I'll
like
bring
look
Sage with
around
me,
and
though.
see. Maybe.
And-
Do what?
I'll bring Sage with me.
Perfect. There you go. Mia will
and
bring
I
Sage.
am awesome at dying on screen.
Right. So
Putting that out there. Just putting that out.
That's all you need. It's all you need on your resume, really.
everybody,
Exactly. Great at
everybody
being
that's
dead.
listening to the show obviously knows how to find us. John, where can they find more of you?
I am on Twitter at J Thomas Gray, Gray.
Awesome. Go check him out.
Awesome.
Tweet at him. Tell him how much you loved hearing him on the podcast. Maybe he'll come back and join us again at another time. And as always, everybody have a very safe and happy Halloween. We appreciate you listening. Go check out Project-Nerd for all your nerdy goodness that is happening around the world. Check out their podcast network. If you like what we do here on High Five the Podcast, you will be excited to know that Jay and I have our fingers in the podcast workings at Project Nerd.
Yeah, we do.
So good, cool things happening there. You can also find us on social media, on Twitter at High the number 5 the podcast, on Instagram at High Five the Podcast, all letters, no numbers, and on Facebook at High Five the Podcast. Jay, we're also on Letterboxd.
We are High Five the Podcast. You can find us there.
And don't forget to subscribe to the
along individually.
And don't forget to subscribe to the Patreon. Come, give us all of your monies. Tiers start at $3. Literally, $3 may not be much to you, but it means a ton to us. So give us all of your monies and help us keep making these podcasts and giving you the free funny all the time. Everybody, thank you so much. John, thank you. Mia, welcome to the family.
Thank
Joey,
you.
you're fine. And everybody else,
I'll take
we'll
it.
see you next week.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.